There are very few people outside of those trapped in addiction who truly understand the feeling of hopelessness and isolation that addiction brings with it. But of course, when you are in the chaos of addiction, the last thing you believe is that there is a way out, because you can't see it. The last thing you want is someone telling you to take responsibility, because that means you have to give up and you have to stop, and you don't know how. But anyone who is truly in recovery today will tell you that thank God I was made to take responsibility, because with it came self-worth, stable relationships, and a feeling of belonging. It is when you take that responsibility and deal with the consequences of addiction, that is when you are in long-term recovery. And wrapping us in cotton wool only enables us and prevents us from moving on. The Secretary of State, I know and have seen, and many service users that he has worked with over the last few years, understands addiction, and that to move on from that, we really do have to take responsibility. And whilst trapped in addiction, we may not like that, but look around this festival today. The social enterprises that are out there, look around the service user groups and the people that you have seen in recovery. Because taking responsibility and dealing with the consequences brings with it that sense of purpose and a purpose of belonging. And that is why I asked to introduce Iain Duncan Smith today. Because over the last 5 years, we have seen that he understands addiction and has spent his time with those in recovery. And he is one of the key drivers of delivering our ambitious drug strategy that we have today. And with that drug strategy, we know that we can move on, we can take responsibility, and actually, we can really do things we believed we couldn't do. You've heard from Stuart Veer this morning, you've heard from a lot of people, you've seen it out there. So, I'm delighted to introduce the Right Honourable Iain Duncan Smith.
Noreen, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. It is a real pleasure to be here today. I have to apologise before I start, because I'm recovering myself at this time from a cold, so if I cough and splutter my way through this, my apologies, I may get too close to all of you. Can I start by thanking the Recovery Partnership for organising today's festival. It's an inspired idea and I think it's absolutely brilliant. And my particular thanks, as Noreen's been up here, and gratitude to Noreen. The truth is, I'm here because I was told to be here by Noreen. That's the reality. That's our relationship. She tells me what to do, and I do it as much as I possibly can. And that's because I think actually Noreen is quite remarkable herself, and I think exemplifies what this is really all about. Single-handedly, herself turning her own life around, and then changing the whole of the debate by demonstrating there was a better way, and focusing this debate and policy, I hope and believe, on setting people free from their drug and alcohol addiction and on the path to a better life, rather than just maintaining individuals on dependency. And I first went to visit Noreen many years ago, and I saw for myself really firsthand, and in some sense, although I'd done a lot of work looking at recovery, this Noreen's centre was the one that really made me realise that there was a possibility that government could actually make a difference by allowing these kind of centres to grow and change and to offer some real hope for people outside. So really what she's managed to do is unite politicians, I think of all hues, those who really care, alongside charity workers, top employers, and even celebrities in support for giving recovery addicts a second chance. I also want to say something else, because the other day I was looking through the papers knowing I was coming here, and I saw in, I think it was a Spectator, Russell Brand, I think he was coming here later, I'm not certain, I'm told that, had written this piece about his own his own recovery. It was quite interesting, actually, about, I thought the piece was very interesting because it rather exemplified what was going on. And I thought he made two particular points in the article which were rather important and I want to come back to. One was that for him, recovery is permanent in the sense that every day it's always a struggle to stop regressing and going back, and that's a challenge. And the second thing I thought was very important was he recognises and made it very clear to lots of people that you need somebody that you can be in touch with when that moment comes when it gets very difficult. You need somebody there that can support you and just remind you what this is all about. And I thought his piece was particularly good because for too long, I think we all need reminding of this. When people are suffering from addiction, we as a society have focused in the past on just containing the problem, managing the symptoms rather than treating it at source, worrying more, shall we say, about the issues around crime than we do about what happens to that life that is caught up. And in my area of interest, the welfare system, there is clear evidence of what happens when you do that. There are around 100,000 people claiming sickness benefits whose illness is primarily down to drug or alcohol addiction. We know that primarily because quite often if you have deep alcohol and drug problems, then you also then eventually start to develop all sorts of other problems as well. And of these, a staggering 23,000 have been claiming incapacity benefits for a decade or more. Many unseen for that entire duration by anybody who might be able to help them. No one checking whether their health has changed or might improve, and if they were to engage with treatment, how much better they might be. It cannot surely be right that people suffering from addiction simply get written off, parked on benefits, all too often, without any belief that their life could possibly change or change for the better. So the work of Back O'Connor, as I was saying earlier on, and other organisations like it, shows that nothing could be further from reality. Visiting a rehab centre a few years ago, also I met an ex-prisoner, this is really vivid in my mind even as I say this, who had been a serious drug user, and whose story was a real source of inspiration to those he was talking to, but also as I listened in a sense to me. And I remember he told me, and others, and I want to quote this a bit as far as I can because I think this is about what he said. I was, until I recovered, a one-man crime wave in my area. Every day was spent figuring out what house to burgle, how I could get money to feed my drug habit, essentially how I could survive just kicking along. I did it, he said, for 20 years. God knows, he said, how many places I robbed, how many people I troubled or hurt, trying to steal their property, all their money, how degraded I became. I was arrested endlessly, I was charged, I was let loose again, I was in prisons, I was out of prisons. Until finally, I was able to, and went through, a program to get off my drug addiction altogether. And that was what turned things around for me. And in a sense, by addressing the root cause of the problem, tackling the addiction itself, he had finally broken free from a life that he might not have chosen to live were he free of drugs already. And when I met him, he was now seeing the children that he had not seen for the first time in years, putting what mattered back in perspective in his life and recognising his responsibilities. So the help and support offered whilst in rehab was playing a vital part, but I was also particularly struck by the man's strength of character and conviction. His determination to take control of his own life and do something positive with him, with that decision, but also the fact that he needed just people to help him and he would then do the rest. So strength, conviction, determination. Not necessarily three words, I guess, you would use to describe someone with a history of substance abuse and crime. Yet for an individual in recovery, these characteristics are precisely what is required, I think, required of them if they are to maintain their motivation, make positive choices, and overcome adversity. In taking steps to address their addiction, individuals gain valuable knowledge, both about themselves and about how to deal with and understand their impact on others, which can readily be applied to other aspects of their life. In fact, There is a much bigger point, really, I suppose. Really, we need to suggest that recovered addicts can make for extremely motivated, loyal and committed employees for the very same reasons that I've raised, all the more grateful for the opportunity to work because it offers a highly valuable opportunity to stay on track whilst bringing tenacity, drive and dedication to a job that they are in, a set of skills that employers might otherwise struggle to find or value, which, if they knew a little bit more about that recovering addict, would actually perhaps allow them to value that even more. And sadly, too often, I think, therefore, this talent is left untapped. Potential employers have been put off by the real strong misconceptions that employing people who have been through rehab is overly risky. Ironically, research suggests that this stigma itself can negatively affect people's chances of recovery. The reality is that, yes, there is a risk involved for employers, but that is true of taking on any new employee. You balance risks with potential outcomes. What's more, with the help of the treatment sector, the government is taking important measures to minimise any uncertainty around employing a recovering addict. So just a word about how. We've already started changing the state supports people with an addiction, with promising signs that the right interventions can have a positive effect. Since 2005, the proportion of drug and alcohol users successfully going through treatment and not returning has increased by around about a quarter. To start, this is progress, but there's a lot more to improve. These outcomes must get better. The government's drug and alcohol strategy now sets out our commitment to prioritise full recovery, meaning freedom from dependence on drugs and alcohol. I want to just restate that again. The definition is freedom from dependence on drugs and alcohol. That is absolutely crucial. For if the outcomes are to be sustainable, recovery must be about getting clean, rather than just bringing someone's addiction under control. Abstinence instead of maintenance. No one knows this better than Noreen and others here today. Badkamra have advocated this approach for years, as many in this room have, but we are now starting to see it put into practice across the treatment sector. We are also promoting a broader, more holistic approach to recovery at the same time, recognising that the problems faced by drug and alcohol users are often interlinked and also overlapping. Alongside someone's addiction, we must address the other issues that hold individuals back, limiting their capacity to improve their own life. That is why we are taking steps to join up different support services and treat problems at the same time together. Take the 8 pilot programs launched last year, where we are incentivising treatment at the same time as incentivising treatment providers to identify and address a whole range of social problems that exist around that treatment. Paying them not just for helping someone to break free from drugs and alcohol, but also for the outcomes they achieve in terms of preventing reoffending, getting people off the street and improving their overall quality of life. For anyone going through rehab, the value of whether these positive changes cannot be underestimated. Having a stable family life, a safe place to live, good overall health, and of course feelings of self-worth. All these are vital in supporting a full and lasting recovery. Yet there is one final step in the recovery journey, perhaps the most important of all. If we are serious about making a sustainable difference to people's lives, moving from dependence to independence, then work ultimately is the best stepping stone to doing so. Earning a wage can help in itself, helping get on top of problem debt, for example, or in terms of the opportunity that that work then brings. Even something as simple as earning a holiday can make a big difference to a normal family life, where insecurity had previously prevailed. The money seemed always a problem, but if the money is earned through work, then it becomes a big step towards individuals regaining control over their own lives and making a contribution and having a sense of real achievement where there was none before. But perhaps more than that, work itself is a vital component in all our daily lives, for it shapes us, develops us, and helps us all to create friends and a sense of belonging, a sense of well-being. The money we earn normally through work gives us the choices that we then make in life, and the work we do helps us to develop as human beings, so we can then make those choices by being informed properly. Put simply, having a job is one of the best ways for individuals to find a foothold in society again, and then, having earned that right, stay there. Given the transformative effect it can have, we must do all we can to help those who are able to move into work. For people who are a long way from the workplace, who lack skills or the work habit, who have been through rehab or recently released from prison, that means addressing the barriers that hold them back and giving them the best prospect of securing and then holding that job. And that is what the work programme that we've set up is ultimately all about. I know and understand that you've already heard today from Stuart Veer, Chairman of Avanta, one of our work programme providers, but I just want to reiterate why I think this is important. Through the work programme, we have tasked the best organisations in the voluntary and private sectors, and there's still more to be done about getting more of those from the voluntary sectors involved, with delivering personalised employment support for the hardest to help individuals. As part of this, we have launched 2 pilot programmes specifically targeted at supporting drug and alcohol addicted claimants into work. The Recovery Works pilot will test the impact of higher job outcome payments for individuals engaged in drug treatment, offering a financial incentive to support addicts and rehab and into work, so a seamless process. The other, Recovery and Employment, is about promoting cooperation between providers and the treatment experts with better sharing of existing knowledge and resources. In other words, focusing in on what it takes to get those who have had this addiction and difficulty through to the point of work. But in both cases, because we are focused on long-term outcomes, paying for the results achieved in sustaining people into work for 2 years, providers must make sure that individuals are ready to move into work and stay there. There's no point in trying to shove somebody into a job when they're not stable enough or ready to take it, and that actually scars them later on, so when they are, they may be reluctant to do that. Whether through getting clean, engaging in training or education, gaining work experience, or building confidence. In the process, individuals are given, I hope and believe, real opportunity to rebuild their own lives, to be part of that process rather than have it administered to them. Just last month I visited the Brink restaurant in Liverpool, an excellent social enterprise putting all of this into action, really quite inspiring, and which I believe here is represented in the room. As well as providing a space where people can meet and socialise, what I found really interesting was that the Brink also acts as a recovery hub, just bringing together a wide range of different services into the same location. And it was also fascinating to see how it's shaped up as a venue for fellowship groups to run sessions. It has on-site counselling and referrals, and importantly, it offers employment advice and support, delivered by both Action on Addiction and the local employment agency. It really, really, really is a very special kind of place. And the majority of the staff are themselves recovered addicts, with work experience opportunities for others like them, and there obviously to be able to help give advice and support, the point I mentioned earlier about the article that I'd read. Giving individuals in recovery a sense of self-respect, helping them to understand and cope with the pressures of a job, ultimately getting them ready for the world of work. And what's more, all the profits go directly back into the community, in turn funding rehab programs for those still battling with addiction. But what's really also interesting about this is, same with Badkamra and others that I visited, but particularly recently with this, is that almost anybody in the community can drop by. And you start to break down the barriers and the misconceptions about people who are in recovery from people who arrive in there to see actually what a good bunch of people they really are and how motivated they are. So in a sense it goes wider than just dealing with addicts. This whole concept, like the tea room, etc., is about bringing people in to say, just look what we can achieve if we're given a chance. That's almost the most important thing about binding a community together, so to get them to understand that we're kind of all in this together, and that we're the less if somebody out there fails, and we gain if somebody out there succeeds. So nothing illustrates better, in a sense, that vision for change, restoring hope and stability to those previously left on the margins, giving them a chance to turn their lives around. You know, in a sense, as I said, with the government and with the treatment sector, we're already beginning to make progress. Yet I believe there are two sides to the process. In a scenario very familiar to the businessmen and women obviously here today, and on a wider sense, I think it comes down to the fact that it's a question of supply and demand. Basic economics, really. By getting and keeping addicts clean, equipping those same ex-addicts with the skills and experience they need, and then helping them to establish themselves a stable life, we are ensuring that individuals are prepared, willing and able then to move into work. So there is a highly motivated, highly determined supply of labour, put in very basic economic terms. What now remains is the demand side of the economics. We need employers of all sizes and from across all different industries who are willing to take part in this, to take on recovered addicts, able to look beyond someone's past and see their skills and aptitude and their loyalty and potential. In other words, to look at them and not just see what happened, but to see what might happen. That is just one word that changes their prospects. And that is what today's Recovery Festival, I hope and believe, is all about. Challenging the preconceptions around employing people who have been through rehabilitation. Opening employers' eyes to the possibilities that are there. Encouraging that demand for those very same people to be involved. And through offering work placements and opening up job vacancies to recovered addicts, you stand to gain from the knowledge and talent that they can bring to the workplace. Comforting widespread problems, people with problems, and also confronting those same prejudices. And giving individuals, I think, a real chance to get on in life. So really, in conclusion, at a time when consumers have never been more demanding about what they get, looking at the quality and value, not just the goods and services they're buying, but also the quality and value of the companies themselves, which is now more and more under scrutiny. I believe this offers a real opportunity to set businesses apart, to prove that they are different, that they are about the community just as they care about their business, and building a workforce and rebuilding lives from that community at the same time. That is really the challenge for all of us, from government through to industry, through to small businesses. The idea that yes, we're about maximising the return on the money that we invest. Yes, we are about profits. Yes, we are about building a stable economy, but at the same time, remembering that it is the people in the economy that do all this for us, and we cannot afford to leave anybody behind. Thank you very much.